Well, here we are. For me, it's Saturday afternoon here in Arizona. Another hot July day. One of the most important things for me, and it's hard to do this time of year, is to be outdoors. Nature has always been such a great tool for me, especially with meditation, with quiet, with giving perspective and creating space for myself. And today I just felt like I had to go out. I had to get out this morning. And so I decided I would kayak this morning early. I was out by 6:30. I was on the water by about 6:30 or so this morning, just to be able to be in that open space for a good amount of time, for about 2 hours. Just me and my thoughts and this space and the mountains and the water and everything else around me. And I've always been struck by nature, and nature has been such a great gift for me, as I'm sure many other people. Because nature has a way of revealing things about ourselves that we aren't always open to seeing right into us. And so I like to spend that time outdoors and in silence, and no ear pods, no nothing else, just me and nature at that moment, and this point a kayak. And I happened to be going by and saw out here there's wild burros along the river, around the lake, excuse me. And I was just kind of struck watching them. They're just there, and I couldn't help but to think that two looked very much alike. There was another one that was black, so I immediately thought something like it's the black sheep of the family, and yet there they are. But there's nothing obstructing them from just being there. No one's judging them. There's no fear. There's no anything. They just are. And how hard it can be for me, for you, for us to be able to let so many of those restrictions and limitations we put on ourselves, that it's hard for us to just show up. It's hard for us to just be in a particular place in a particular time. And that's what I always loved about nature, and watching those wild burros reminded me of that this morning. And it in many ways then frees me up in that time, in that space, to do the same, and not care about what other people are thinking, knowing no one else is paying attention anyway. So any kind of judgment that I'm making at that point is about myself. And that's probably the great limitation, the great obstruction, right? That we do to ourselves, is that the judgment is much more about us than it is about someone else or something else. Those wild burros could care less that I'm even in that space. As long as I don't get too close, as long as I don't get in their area, every piece kind of stays in the whole area. And so I was just mindful of that. That was one thing I was mindful of while I was out there. The other was it was still fairly quiet that time of the morning. You start to see some boats, but primarily kayaks and paddle boards and stuff like that. And while I was a little further out in the lake, a boat happened to come by. There was a water skier on the back of the boat. It was an older couple. And then the waves, of course, start to ripple, and immediately I could begin to feel the fear. Well, what if I topple over? Well, the water's really warm. There's no fear of toppling over. I have to wear a life jacket because I'm renting the kayak. And yet immediately those fears begin to surface, and I have to be mindful that there's nothing to be afraid of in that moment. That even when ripples begin to take shape in our own lives, fear in many ways restricts us from just kind of riding the wave, which is all I did while I was on the water today. I rode the wave. I made sure I held on to the kayak just so that it didn't wobble too much. but for all intents and purposes, just rode the wave as it came through. I didn't have to be afraid. I didn't have to kind of react to everything around me. I just simply let it be. And for me, I still think that's one of the great gifts that nature has given me. And someone had asked me recently, like, well, how did you get to where you are when it comes to meditation and doing, and kind of just being centered in life? And so much of it has been spending time outdoors. It's been in quiet, it's been in silence, and just allowing myself to be still. That even when those ripples come, even when the hurricane comes, even when the tornado comes, you still got to be calm. You still have to maintain that sense and to recognize this too will pass. This too will pass. Whatever it is that you may be going through in your life, the most important thing that you could do for yourself. And people give up on finding that stillness and meditation way too quickly. It is a lifelong process. It has taken me years, more than 20 years at this point, of doing this work that has given me that sense of groundedness within myself, that when storms do come, that when the waves begin to ripple, I don't have to fear. That doesn't mean that I don't experience fear. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't arise in me in those moments. It did today. It was right there. The most important thing in those moments, though, is that you don't react to it. Because all you do then is you feed into the fear. You feed into the fear, you'll start to shake back and forth, and in this case, you're going to topple over. You're going to spin over because you're allowing fear to control the situation, rather than maintain it. Maintain that stillness, maintain that quiet, and allow the storm to pass. The storm will pass. All storms pass. None of them are for life. It's what we do with the storm as it approaches. There were no storms, physical storms out there. The guy I rent from did tell me that the storms have been bad this summer up there. But it was a very still morning. The water was extremely still, except for that moment of this boat coming by. And watching those wild burros and the stillness of the kayak, the cactus and everything else around me in that setting reminded me in that very moment, and I knew the waves were coming. I could physically see those waves working their way over to me. They were far enough out that I could see them coming towards me. Just be still. Be still. Allow yourself to be calm. Allow yourself to not react to the fear. That is the key I have found for all of it. It is so easy to react to fear. And when we allow ourselves to react to fear, we only make situations worse, because the storm will pass. And I've had to remind myself a lot that, even just within the past couple of weeks, going through some stuff myself, that if you really want to succeed and you want to do well in life, you got to be willing to play the long game. And the long game is not about reacting at all. And at times it's going to be about taking hits, and it's going to be about taking shots. And that's a part of life, unfortunately, because not everyone plays the same game. But I've had to learn, and again, I've learned it so much by just making that time to be outdoors and to create and find that space within myself, that I don't need to react, and I don't need to be identified by everyone else's waves and craziness that they may try to thrust upon me. It will pass. But you got to be willing to play the long game. And so I was just mindful of it while I was out on the lake today. It was just great to be out there again. I had not been out there in a couple months because it gets so hot. But it was a good reminder for me in a moment where it has felt like there's been some turbulence in my life. There has been turbulence in my life. To just be still. Don't judge. Don't react. And just allow yourself to be in the moment. Allow yourself to be still in the moment. And the storm, like all storms, will pass.